Weekend Podcast. I am Raz. This is my co-host, Dr. Jamie Moore, Dr. J, and he is back off some vacation, so he's looking real good right now. Got a little sun, doesn't look so vampire-y right now.
Right.
That
used to have a skin of a killer. Now,
looking good from that beach time.
Yeah.
Woo! All right.
Still not that tan. Let's be honest. It's fine.
That's because you're smart. Stay out of it. You'll be on too late. Well, hey, we are pumped today. We've got a old friend of mine in here. We're really excited to have in here. We've got a guy here who has done some crazy things in his life. He's one of the biggest adventurers I know. Adventures in following Jesus. He's an awesome husband, awesome father, and God has called him into some crazy stuff, which is what we're going to hear about today, which has been really fun. And also, he's quite the volleyball player. I mean, like semi-pro. So, that a lot of people might not know this about him. But anyway, I've got a good buddy of mine in here. We love him, Josh Johnson. We are so glad to have you with us today. So thanks for being here, man.
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Yep.
It's exciting to, be in touch with, my old Ohio kin.
Right.
You guys are amazing.
There you go. Yeah, there's no Ohio in him now. He's over there in the Redding, the metropolis of Redding, California.
Yeah. Hey, Redding, California. We call Redding, Alabama, man. It's the
Claremont County folks would be all right there. Yes, it's all right.
I mean, it's the most Midwest of California you can get.
That is true.
The culture it's not what you think. California is so big. What's crazy is you can put California on the East Coast and it'd be New York to Florida. It's that much difference in culture, if you can imagine. With this state, when I came to Reading, it was quite culture shock. I was like, "Whoa, this is not, wasn't what I expected." But I grew up in Southern California for part of my life, and Reading is different. It definitely has a lot more. It feels a lot more like Ohio than it doesn't sometimes.
Oh yeah, you got your hunters and fishermen and shooters out there, and all kinds of good folks out there. Yeah, we've been out there and spent a little time out there, actually with Josh, and his awesome wife. So, anyway, well, hey man, one of the things we'd love to ask, and I know that a lot of this story, but our listeners don't, is tell us how you came into Christ. Were you one of those guys like me and Jamie, like you were born in a pew, like your mom might have actually delivered you in an actual pew, or did you come in later? Tell us your story a little bit.
Yeah, I came in later. Although there's a lineage of faith in my family. My grandfather was an AG pastor during the Jesus movement. Had relationship with Chuck Smith and the guys down there. He was pastor in Seal Beach for part of his ministry. And but my mom, before having me, kind of fell away from the Lord, had some really hard stuff happen in her life. That when I came in and she met my dad and came into the world, like she was not wanting to be in the church environment at that time. So I didn't grow up in church, but I had really great grandparents, praying family members. My parents ended up divorcing when I was 2. Mom remarried my stepdad. There's a whole story there, and then we ended up moving to Ohio when I was about 11 years old. Away from my biological dad, kind of really hard time during that transition to Ohio for me. And
how old were you, Josh, when you came down to Ohio?
About 11.
Okay.
Gotcha. So that's which is enough time to become a Dodger fan. So 0 to 11 is all you need.
That's right. I always I don't forget. I think of you.
When you insert a 1988 series win with the Bulldog, then you're in for life. So that's
a little Kirk Gibson action in there. That's what we're talking about. One of the more famous. Yeah, man. Well, you know what, you might be a little too young for this, but you know what my nickname was in high school and college? The Penguin.
No, what?
The Penguin, because I look like Ron Say. I was a third base. I played third base, and then I got the short leg quick steps. So then it was back when they were when he was famous. So I had that nickname, Penguin. But yeah, I every once in a while, right? I've gotten hold of you on a World Series, right? When the Dodgers have been rocking down. I'm like, all right, come on. We were actually against each other in one of them not too long ago when Houston, a while back, Houston Astros. because we we
Oh,
we came to. I know. So anyway, all right,
no,
go ahead.
and that's it. I was 11, and so it was a hard time. But I would say where I believe there was some pretty like critical God moments where my parents decided, my stepdad and my mom decided they wanted to find a church when we moved to Ohio. So a couple years after moving there, they went. I remember us church hopping and kind of testing out all the churches, kind of like we were trying on, clothes or something. It was like, here's this kids ministry, this thing, this whatever, all this stuff. We went to a Foursquare church, Assemblies of God church, a Calvary Chapel, a Catholic church, I don't know, is all of them, then a non-denominational, and then back to an Assemblies of God. And my stepdad grew up Catholic and went to, I think he went, yeah, he went to Catholic church his whole life. He's Italian, um, and uh, and so my mom though felt like God. She was like, "Hey, he's the head of our house. I'm gonna ask him. I want to ask him where he wants to our family to go."
Hmm.
And I mean, that's a ballsy move, I think.
Hmm. Hmm.
She grew up Assemblies of God to ask your Catholic raised husband where he wants to go to church. And of all places, he chose the charismatic one, which
Huh.
I mean, I don't have any clue how that happened. But for anything that's wrong with me theologically, it's my stepdad's fault. If I just blame him.
That's awesome.
Um, so, but no, I think what happened there is my story is real. I'll tell it real quick because it uh yeah, we chose a church, but I didn't choose God yet.
Hmm.
So my family choosing church didn't mean that Josh all of a sudden came into the glory of all things. And I was a kid,
Yeah.
and I was just bopping around, and I got drug around like with my parents, and I'm 12 years old, 13 years
Did
old,
you have
and
any siblings, Josh? Did you have any
yeah,
siblings?
just my younger brother. I have two older siblings, but they weren't living with us at the
Okay,
time.
gotcha.
They
Gotcha.
were they're a lot older than me, from my mom's previous marriage.
Gotcha.
But my younger brother and I grew up together mostly. So
Okay.
so we we went to church for a little bit. So I'm like 12 years old, maybe almost 13, and I might be in between 12 and 13 years old. And I'm in this like program that Assemblies of God had. It was like Boy Scouts for Christians called Royal Rangers, and
I remember
um, I couldn't be more bored
Mm.
being
that.
Royal Rangers. And all I wanted to do was play basketball and baseball. And talking about camping was not the thrill of my life at that time. I love camping now. I love taking my kids camping and all that, but I wasn't trying to go out there and start a fire with my bare hands. I I wanted to be Barry Bonds or someone else, like so I snuck out on a Wednesday night. My parents thought I was at Royal Ranger, and I snuck out. Left without Royal Rangers knowing I left because they didn't know. That's how good the search security was. So,
Oh yeah.
um,
Yeah, that sounds like back
and
then. Yeah.
and so this church we're at is like 2,000 person church and it had like 3 or 4 buildings. And so I left the gymnasium, walked through the parking lot over to the original smaller chapel where the youth group met, and it was a small building. It might have been 3,000 square feet, but it had 300 youth in there. It was a
Wow.
humming youth group.
Wow.
And I walk in, worship is just blasting. The sound system's about 5x the need of that space. Um, I don't know.
Right.
There might have been smoke machines. I have no idea, but probably. And I get up to the doors, and worship stops, and I stay in the lobby, but I can hear because there's a crack through the big wooden doors, and there's a crack, and I can hear everything because it's kind of one of those swinging doors that you can get into the sanctuary like that. And I'm in the lobby, and I just stay in there, and I can see through the glass and the crack of the door, and I can hear what they're saying. And I just kind of stand out there as a little 12-year-old. I'm like, it's scary to go in there. There's like seniors in high school, they're just huge men.
Yeah.
They're growing beards already. I have no idea what's happening.
Well, Jamie
And
grew a beard
I
at 12 or
listened.
13. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and then I listened to this kid. He gets up on stage. His name is Jason Howard, who I have a relationship with now.
Wow.
Amazing guy. Lives in Greenville, South Carolina. He's 18 years old. He gets up on stage. He's a senior at this high school called Amherst High School in Northeast Ohio. It's just west of Cleveland. He's a star soccer player on the team, and he gets up and tells a testimony of how he had a tumor, and the doctors had said he had this growth that was growing on the inside of him that needed to be taken out. They had scans, they showed everything there. His mom apparently was pretty obstinately praying and told the doctors, "You aren't going to take out a tumor because God's going to heal my son."
Mm.
And they were like, "Okay, but we're probably taking out the tumor. Thank you." I mean, it's like one of those, like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
"You're really sweet. We
Yeah.
totally get it. You're
Yep.
a mom. You
Yep.
love your son." They were gracious about it, but she was like, "No, you don't understand. Like, this is going to happen." Um,
Wow.
well, it gets to surgery day. I'm telling this Jason tells a way better version. Obviously, it's his life, but this is what I remember. So these are the only pieces I remember. I haven't asked him to retell me this story
Mhm.
because I'm like, well, this is just my version of it, how I heard it, and then what happened after. So this is not canonized um,
Yeah.
version of the gospel, but
Yeah.
this is like I hear him tell. He's like, yeah, and then it was surgery day, and my mom tells the doctor, "You're gonna. I know you have to go in there, but you're gonna go in there, and you're not gonna find anything." So they open him up, and then he goes and then he lifts his shirt up. He said, "Here's the scar," and it was a scar that went down his chest, right down the middle. You can see it. And of course, he had like six-pack abs. I mean, like, okay, dude, come on. Um,
He liked to show
and,
that scar
That's a
a
great
lot.
story. Let me lift my shirt real quick. Yeah.
and he goes and he's like, "The Lord healed me. There was no tumor in there. The doctors
Wow.
sewed me back up, and they didn't
Couldn't do
they
it.
didn't take out anything."
Wow.
Wow.
And
Praise the Lord.
and of
Wow.
course, the mom was like, "I told you." The mom was like, "I told you so. This is what
Told you.
you do." And but what happened in that moment for me, quietly in the foyer of this church, was this moment where sweet baby Jesus became a lot more interesting.
Mm.
Mhm.
Went from storybook to holy moly, I didn't know God actually, one, cared about our suffering.
Mhm.
Two,
Mhm.
I didn't know that he was that interactive with us.
Mm.
Mhm.
Um, I wasn't interested in emotion and what God, what I saw at church and people getting kind of flamboyant and all this stuff that,
Mhm.
I love all the varieties of humans that we have in this world and the ways that they express themselves. But
Mhm.
what drew me was a story, a testimony of someone that said, um, God touched me in a way that only he could.
Mm.
Mhm.
It wasn't the healing per se. It was God touched me. God cared. God was involved.
Mm.
And also the courage
Mhm.
and faith of his mother was also pretty powerful for me. So,
Yeah.
um, have I seen people die and pray? Yes.
Sure.
Um, but the power of that story was that God is with us.
Mm.
Mhm.
Um, and kind of the idea of Emmanuel, but also
Mhm.
this isn't this isn't God of the past. This is God of the present, and the
There you
God
go.
with us. And I think that changed my life. I immediately I snuck back to Royal Rangers to close the loop on that. Snuck,
He wasn't going to get a
snuck
beating that
back to
night.
Royal Rangers. And they, at the end of Royal Rangers, we're just playing in the gym. And so I got back into the gym like nothing happened. I didn't
Mhm.
tell my parents that I snuck out. Hey, because maybe God moved in me, but I wasn't sanctified yet. So it's okay. The process is starting.
That's right.
So I told mom that I'd like to start going to youth group, that I didn't like Royal Rangers. I want to go to youth group. She said, "You're too young." I said, "You should really ask Pastor Greg. I think he'd let me." So she did. And he was like, "Absolutely." And I became his right hand guy as an eighth grader.
Oh wow.
And he mentored me the next 5, 6 years.
Oh wow.
Mm.
He's now a pastor down in Naples, Florida, at a church called Destiny Church. And so I just still have a great relationship with them.
Funny.
So that was my story, kind of led me to faith. Eventually went to Oral Roberts University, and a lot of stuff happened in between, but it was that moment I can point to that changed me.
Mm.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty awesome. I love that.
Mm.
So something kind of exciting happened to you at Oral Roberts as well with somebody you met there, a female. Did you meet her there?
Yeah. Yeah, I would call it one of my first adventures, the riskiest pursuit of my life.
Yes, sir.
Um, yeah. Oh my gosh. And it was so touch and go too, and the whole time. But I met my wife Rebecca there, and it was it was like, such a crazy experience. It was like nothing mattered. I didn't have any visions or dreams beyond marrying her. It was like it was like everything stopped for a few years, where it was like this mattered the most.
Uh-huh.
Um, and if someone said, "Man, hey dude, I think you're a little out of balance. You need to, maybe spend more time with God, or maybe you need to do whatever." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, cool. So where's Rebecca? Can I go see her?" So
I love it.
yeah, I absolutely just, you know, yeah, I loved her before she loved me. We were friends for a while. We just had a lot of fun. Mostly our relationship started in a lot of laughter and fun, and then developed. Eventually I told her I liked her, and she was like, "Wait, wait, wait, whoa." She had me in friend zone,
Uh-huh.
and so friend zone wasn't good for me anymore. I needed to go beyond friend zone, and
Uh-huh.
so she needed a little bit to get there, and eventually, rest is history with fun story in between. But we got married in '04, so we're this year will be 21 years.
Yes.
We have four daughters now, and one's in college at Grand Canyon University, and so we're kind of in that stage of every couple of years we're going to be launching a new adult. So
Uh-huh.
it's a fun season.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's awesome. Now she's a volleyballer too, right? She's a killer volleyball player.
She's the actual semi-pro. I'd call myself recreational pro. She's a Division One, uh, volleyball player. I think if she wanted it, she probably could have played for Team Canada after college. She just got burnout.
Yeah.
Mm.
Playing sports in college is a more than
Oh
full-time
yes.
job, and
Oh yes.
it's
I hear
easy
you.
to experience burnout. She took a 10-year hiatus of playing
Uh-huh.
afterward, and she now plays, and it's so fun watching her, because it's like, just she's just so good. She's so athletic, and a lot of fun. She's technically so sound. So it was a lot of fun watching her. And obviously I got as close to the game as I could. The coaches all loved me, so I got to work out with the team, practice with the team, because anything that would get me more time around
You are smooth, man.
was
That's
all
pretty
I
good.
cared about. And so learning how to build relationship with the coach got me more time with Becca. Score.
This might be one of our best podcasts for the single guys. What I'm hearing you say is you go get it. Go get it. You want that girl, you go
Yeah.
get her. That's what I'm talking about. I like that focus. And how'd you get out of the
Yeah.
friend zone? Oh my gosh,
Yep.
that's like a whole we might have to go on a whole nother podcast on that. Getting out of the friend zone with Jesus.
Yeah.
We all know that's that is awesome, bro.
Oh man, that was a journey. Yep.
So, Josh, I heard you say that that was one of the first great adventures was meeting and pursuing Rebecca. And interesting, I'm just thinking about, you said earlier that what got you really interested in going from sort of sweet baby Jesus, story Jesus, to this interactive God. And so I'm just thinking about the connection between adventure with the God who interacts with us. And I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
talk a little bit about adventure in general, wherever you want to go with that. What does it look like to adventure with the Lord?
I mean, I think first it just is saying yes. Um, you know, and not having to have it all figured out. I'm probably if I'm a ma- I'm a if I'm a master of anything, it is moving in a direction, staying moving without having a credential first or without. If I have something on my heart, then I move in that direction. And eventually, what's amazing, what God does is He starts to, I think, direct us in a way that gives us the tools, gives us the knowledge we need. And I think that uh, it just always starts with motion. I just didn't wait until I had it all figured out.
Mm.
Hmm.
I,
It's really good.
I think with anything that I've really felt in my heart, it's kind of ready, fire, aim, and in kind of it, whether it's in business or it has been with my faith or with my relationship with Rebecca or it's any of those things. It's like yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we confuse, wisdom with maybe when someone else has something that doesn't quite work out, we kind of say, well, let's build some let's what can we learn from that? And a lot of people are like, well, if you fail, then the wisdom is don't start until you've got it all figured out.
Right.
Mm, that's
I actually believe that without failure, without resistance, without suffering, without any of these things, we actually don't become who we are meant to be. I think we need to experience that, and I think that's just starts by saying I'm going signing up for like a life of adventure, a life of courage, you could call it, a life that
that's
is
good.
um, saying yes without having all the answers. And I think that's what Jesus asked of his disciples. I think that if depending on your personality type, but I bet various disciples were like, Thomas or others might have been like, hey, I got some follow-up questions after saying
Hmm.
yes.
Hmm.
Um, and others were like, hey, yeah, absolutely, whatever, I'm down. Like, whatever you want, Jesus. Like I know some people have a propensity to that, and maybe that's my wiring. And I don't want to discount the value of processing and
Hmm.
thinking things through. I don't want anyone to believe that that means that I kind of put my brain aside and that I don't
Hmm.
didn't use that to kind of analyze and build a strategy. I actually the way that I try and hear God's voice is actually paired up, quite a bit with what these dots that I kind of start to connect that I can see that makes sense, not just spiritually, but also do make sense, in the world we live in,
Hmm.
and I don't think that God is kind of fully separate from that stuff. And
Hmm.
so I know that's a lot. That's like
Hmm.
there's so much to unpack there, and that might not be for today, but to answer your question, it is. I think it starts with movement.
Mm.
Some people
Hmm.
say like, you know, motion is lotion, and it's like how do you just stay moving with God? And
Hmm.
I think that when we're stagnant, I like my relationship to God with God to feel more like a river than a pond. That's for sure.
Mm.
One of the things I
Um,
really like that you said there, and I do think we can. I would like to actually hit on this a little bit more. What you're talking about. But along with that, something interesting you said is that kind of what we do is when we have a failure, and I think this is pretty very much human nature. We don't like pain, and so we we almost cut short. I like how you said that we don't become who God's called us to be because I think that's what James is talking about in James chapter 1, right, where he's saying, "Hey, don't despise this pain. Don't despise
Mm.
these trials of many kinds." In fact, as he completes the couple verses there, he basically talks about because if we embrace it, we actually come into a place of maturing. And so that's kind of what I heard you saying in that. And also another term that we like to use here that I'm kind of hearing you say was what happened with Abraham
Mm-hmm.
is where we talk about being open-handed, and that's like you keep moving. I love that you keep moving, but you're like I don't know the next step, but I'm going to go ahead and take that, and that builds relationship with him. But it isn't always easy, and sometimes it's some places like that. One of the a place I want to take you that, if you're willing to go there with me, is would you tell us your story? Because this James is what reminded me of this when I was talking about James 1 and what you just said. Um, would you tell us your story? Why did you come back to Cincinnati with your family? Can you tell me about that when Kira was young, and just give us some of your story in that, and
Yeah.
I would love to hear that from your perspective. I can't, I was on the other end of a lot of that with you, but I'd love to hear the front end of that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we moved to Cincinnati, I think it was '07, '08, something like that. Might have been '07. Yeah, we moved there. We felt like, we were in Cleveland for just a little bit after college, graduating university, and then um we visited Cincinnati, and it was weird. We were sitting in the back of this car that was driving us around. A friend's, family member was driving us around town, showing us, and they were very passionate about Cincinnati, but they were passionate about things that we weren't passionate about. And so it wasn't like, oh, it was they were the best tour guide. It was legit in the back seat. We both, Becca and I, uh, were sitting back there, and we're driving through Cincinnati and all the seven hills and the whole thing. And I look over at Becca, and she looks over at me, and I was like, "I think we're gonna move here."
Hmm.
She's like, "That's what I think too." And so, like a month later, we get a house down there in Madison Place on Cambridge. Our first house is now one of the Gladstone houses down there, and 6910 Cambridge. That's where we lived, and that was the first house that we ever rented. We were just in apartments before that, and rented that house for $650 a month. I got $50 off for doing the landscaping.
There you go.
That
There you go.
that was those were the days,
Woo.
man. Those are the
Josh
days.
wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty for that extra fitting.
Man. So
Yeah.
that was fun. So yeah, we moved to Cincinnati, and a year later, after moving to Cincinnati, my wife feels a lump on our 2 year old's arm, her left forearm, while she's bathing her. And she's like, "Oh, I want to go get that checked out." So she goes to a pediatric, just family doctor, or I think she just goes to a family doctor first, and the family doctor says, "Oh, it looks like it's benign. It's not a big deal. Just keep watching it. It should be fine." Becca was not satisfied with that answer, and tried to get in with with some others to get a second opinion. It took a few months. She wanted to get an ultrasound on it. So this was in August. It took till November to get an ultrasound on it. Finally, we called Cincinnati Children's, got an ultrasound. They took a look at it, and then all of a sudden, they were like, "Hey, we'd like to do an MRI." And we're like, "Oh, really?" And they were like, "Yeah, we just want to look at it a little bit more and see a little deeper what's going on." And they do an MRI, and then, fast forward, we're in the middle of um, you know, a conversation now with an oncologist, and they
Mm,
had said that they had reason to believe that, they need to do a biopsy, but they had reason to believe that she had rhabdomyosarcoma, which is a cancer of the muscle,
Mm.
and it's a childhood cancer that is fairly rare. But what was amazing is Cincinnati Children's was one of the referral centers for that type of cancer for kids
Whoa.
worldwide. Like Saudi
mm,
Arabian kids would
mhm,
get flown in and stay in
mhm,
a Ronald McDonald House to deal with,
mhm,
cancers like this, and we happen to live 15 minutes away.
mhm.
So I kind of zoom back, rewind. We're sitting in the back of this yellow Hummer driving around Cincinnati, and we look at each other and say, "I think we're going to move here." And a year later, we're literally down the road from the referral center for the care that my daughter needs. That
Yep.
Mm.
you know
Man.
we end up going through for a
Wow.
year. Um, Kira's, almost 19 now, and she's doing great. She had a year of chemo, radiation, and all this as a kid. She doesn't remember a lot of it, thankfully, but it was pretty like a formidable experience for both of us. I think my wife and I went through it definitely differently. How it impacted our faith was at different junctures and points. My wife was still kind of healing from some like church weirdness that she grew up around. I think I went through deconstruction at that moment,
Mm.
like in that year, if people would use that word. I think what I meant by that is I went through a period of kind of starting over with my faith and kind of unraveling what I had been told and re going through the process of discovering what I believed based on my experiences, but building upon, not discounting or discarding things that were real,
Right.
but trying to cut through the noise of what was told to me that maybe I accepted without actually experiencing.
Mm.
Um, really going, and where that started for me is in '09, while Kira was in the middle of her treatment. I went through Story Form Life at Crossroads Church, and I started in Genesis and got to all the way to Genesis 3. We're just so far into it, all the way to Genesis 3, and I got to wrestle with this implied or implicit human suffering, and got to kind of come in contact again with a God that doesn't seem to um remove or promise the full avoidance of this in the human experience. Um, so I had I saw that from the foundation of that poetic kind of story in Genesis,
Mm.
and then kind of started building upon that for the rest of that, series we went through, which is kind of like, I think it's like 12 or so parts, where you're meant to kind of engage the Bible as if you don't know what's coming
Hmm.
in the next part, and to kind of start, don't insert a bunch of theology or dogma or other types of things into the process. Try and just wrestle and midrash the scriptures in those parts, and then build upon the story and kind of see the story of God, come and unfold. And it was a beautiful journey for me to go through at that time, which um, I kind of point to as one of those, markers that kind of relaunched my faith in a powerful way.
It's interesting, Josh, because I'm just hearing you. That that means that those two big moments had connections to suffering and cancer. That's
Yeah.
interesting to me. This 18-year-old that you're looking through the crack of the door and you're realizing, oh, there's a God who is not afraid of our suffering. And then hear this moment with your daughter and sort of a
Yeah.
rebuilding of your faith again in the midst of cancer, and realizing, oh, he's a God who's with us in our suffering. I just think that I find that really fascinating. I don't know if you've thought about that too much,
Mhm.
but that's fascinating to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't actually put those two together. Um, yeah, that's it. It is interesting. And we, I just started, instead of engaging my faith through, um, necessarily a theology of trying to avoid pain and trying to avoid suffering, starting to see it as, how does God use this as a tool? How can these experiences draw me close to God? And I started seeing the Bible as a ton of stories of resistance, a
Mm,
ton of stories of life not going super peachy.
right.
Yeah.
And so, like, why am I living my life working so hard to make sure that I'm in a temperature controlled environment all the time, driving down the road with no resistance, not feeling the wind at all, not experiencing the weather, temperature, or sweat, or toil, or any of these things? Why am I trying so hard at that?
Mhm.
It doesn't make sense. It's not actually the life that God invites us into. It's not what he promises us. He promises that he'll be with us in these things. It
Yeah.
says,
Mhm.
in Hebrews, I believe it says that Jesus learned obedience to the things that he suffered.
Hmm.
So if the Christ, the incarnate of God, learned obedience through suffering, then why can't I?
Mm. Mm.
And I don't go out there looking for suffering either. I'm not trying to, like,
Sure.
hey, let's
Right.
go,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
like that would be super weird. Guess what? We don't actually have to look for suffering.
I have say that a lot. Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it's
You
like,
know,
it's
if
like,
you live long
hey,
enough, believe me, it'll
hey,
find you.
hey,
Yeah.
news flash,
Yeah.
it will come.
Yeah.
No matter who you are on this earth, it'll come in some form or
Mhm.
fashion. We live in America. It looks different for us.
Yeah.
But guess what? Everyone dies in America too.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
And and when I've been to Haiti, I've seen suffering on a different level. And we can talk about levels of suffering, degrees of suffering. Guess what? We lose our parents.
Yep.
Sometimes we lose them too young. Sometimes we lose a child.
Hmm.
Sometimes we experience divorce. Sometimes we experience, um, you know, uh, tearing apart in our family, or friendships that fall apart, or whatever it might be, or a business fails, or whatever. It's like it's
Yeah.
resistance.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's like God is actually what's great, what's amazing about the gospel is that it's good news for all of it.
Mhm.
Right. Right.
It is the good news in the midst of the resistance. He actually came, and actually what's amazing about Jesus is not that he was God and man incarnate and man. It's that he came and he also identified and connected with our suffering.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
This was so powerful about
Hmm.
Jesus is
Right.
that he I don't know of another God that's ever been explained to me or shown to me in any other world religion where the God actually says yes to suffering.
Uh
Yeah.
huh.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's funny because even Paul even then reverses that, and he says, in fact, if I want to know him more, I'm going to engage in his suffering.
Mhm.
That's what he says. I want to know him more, even if it's to the point of
Yep.
suffering with him. And so Paul somehow grabs that. I'm curious about, and I'm just honestly, I'm asking from my own personal standpoint because I know some of this that I experienced. Were there times in there, either you or Rebecca, where you were angry with God, or where you um,
Mm.
had some, let's say, you had some really honest conversations with God?
100%.
Yeah.
August, September of '09. I had to ask the question, if my daughter dies, do I believe God is real?
Mm.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, as we talked about lament for we actually did a week or a couple weeks really because we were talking about
Yeah.
mental health and spiritual health and so on. But we talked about lament and how we don't do that here in America. And anyway, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
exactly what you're saying. Yep. Yep.
yeah, and that's the journey in when I was doing the story from life, and I got to and I started to see that God is inviting us into connection in the midst of our suffering. That I think that sometimes, and this actually does not mean that I don't pray for people to be healed, but was healing a contingency in the contract with God that I had?
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Was healing a contingency
Mm-hmm.
in me following him?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because in real estate we have an inspection contingency, we have a appraisal contingency, we have a loan contingency, and then you get to close on your house, right?
Yeah.
After you remove all the contingencies, I think I needed to go through the journey in my faith to remove a contingency, or say, no, I'm going to back out of this deal.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yep.
and my wife went through that differently. What was interesting is we both had kind of some of these separate things, and we both kind of did that journey, but not actually together at the same time. My
Yeah.
like what my wife's focus on. So we both were focused on our daughter's health, but my wife actually, I think, discovered who she was in the midst of this suffering. That she never saw herself as courageous or powerful or strong
Mm-hmm.
in personality or whatever, but she rose up to a level, that she got to see herself perform, not just on a volleyball court, but now as a super mom, pseudo nurse, caretaker of Kira, and she became a totally different. She grew up like we both grew up in different ways. For me, coming to grips with this part of my faith was critical because I think it was going to set the course for our family going forward,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
and for our life. Because
Wow.
I'm a very, I would say, I'm more of an outgoing personality. So like everything that I believe in, the inertia of that impacts my family.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I knew that, like, this was actually, as we were going through this was a really critical time that was probably going to be like history changing for our family in some ways. And were we going to go to church anymore? Were we going
Right.
to,
Mm-hmm.
continue this thing
Mm-hmm.
called faith? Was I, it's
Mm-hmm.
just all of that. But it was, I think that more and more, thank God the Bible is not PG.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I got.
Yes.
Thank God the Bible's not PG, because had it been in the midst of that time, I think, if it was a children's Bible that I was reading, I don't know that I'd still be a Christian.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But all the suffering that every person of faith that was kind of listed in Hebrews,
Yeah.
all of those people experienced an immense amount of resistance and encountered God in incredible ways in the desert, or in storms, or in battles, or in whatever it was that they were going through. And some of it was self-inflicted, and some of it was just being human
As it is.
and being in the time that
Yep.
they lived in, being particularly in the land that they lived in, being a people that they were just hated for being God's people. That all those things where you just go, man, you could say, well, it's not their fault. I mean, it's whatever. It's like they're a victim. It's like, guess what? Like, even victims, God says, I'll meet you there.
Mhm.
Even if it's not your fault. Oh, guess what? Like, oh, you did this to yourself? Great, God will meet you there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
God will meet you there. My grandfather went to prisons and led so many people to Jesus in prisons, and these are a lot of men that did some things to themselves. They caused, what they caused, and we're all one bad decision away from that. And guess what? They encounter God.
Right. That's the
So I
gospel. I
just
mean, the
think it's
gospel's not for the healthy. It's for the sick. I mean, that's what Jesus
yeah,
says when they're trying to make it. When they're trying to make it that way, the religious people are trying to clean it up and make it that way. And he's like, this isn't for the healthy. This is for now. If they were smart, they
right,
figured out they also weren't healthy. That wasn't what he was saying.
right.
But yeah, I remember Josh going through some similar things you did, and I remember asking. I kept asking and hearing the question: Am I still going to worship you
Yeah.
if this doesn't come out how I want it to come out? Are you still good if this doesn't come out how I want it to come out? That's tough. Those are hard
I think
questions.
that I'm obviously on the other side of it, where I get to tell the story my daughter's is living today.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I'm really grateful for that. So grateful. I can't
Yeah.
put more meaning behind how grateful that I am. It's
Yes. Yeah.
but
Yep.
with with the tonality of what I'm saying, with the depth of what I'm saying, if I had lost her, be different probably. I don't want to discount those who have lost
Yeah.
Right.
and have to
Right.
really
That's right.
go through that and, and have lost.
Yeah.
I could only tell my story and where I've been. I did lose my dad when I was 21. I have lost. I haven't just seen,
Yeah.
you know, thing work out in my life.
Mhm.
I have experienced pain. I've experienced, despite that, I just feel like I've been able to meet God, and in almost every time it's in those places. It's not when I'm on the mountaintop. It's,
Yeah.
when I'm feeling great, I'm on the mountaintop. I'm like, that's great. It's exciting. But those are moments. Most of our life is made up of lifting one leg in front of another.
Mhm.
I heard someone say
Yeah.
walking is just simply catching yourself falling every second.
I've heard
It's
that. Yeah, that's good.
so
Yeah, that's good. No,
and
yeah, that's really good. Yeah, Josh, I
and
actually
that
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just saying that catching ourselves, it just
Yeah.
gets harder and harder as we get older.
Well, that's
But yeah.
yeah, especially my age. Just getting no. It's funny. You saying that reminded me of something, Josh. That's really good. Is I was 26 when I lost my dad, and he was my best friend. And it's funny because, and I've told people this often, is I think, and I grew up following Jesus pretty early on and was really pretty serious about it. But I'm telling you, during that period of time, I also lost him to cancer. He was diagnosed in October of '89 and was dead by February of '90. So super, just a few months. And and it
Mm,
was funny, but I think I probably experienced the closeness of Christ, of the Trinity, in a way certainly had never experienced to that point. And I mean, I remember weeping on Julie's lap, things like that, But there was something there where that kind of happened with what Paul's talking about. I developed a closeness with Christ that was just unbelievable. I mean, I felt him. It was like he engaged. I wasn't even asking. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it was like he just engaged. It was as though he was there holding my hand for that 5 or 6 months. So It's amazing that some of these places, and as you said, the problem is we try so, especially in the Western world, try so hard to avoid it. And the truth is, none of us will. We listened to a guy that's over the Vineyard Movement now, a guy named Jay Pathak. You remember how many times we were listening to him at some kind of conference or something? He kept saying, which was pretty slap you awake. It was pretty good. He goes, "I'm just letting you guys know we're all dying. You're dying." Like, wait, well, we know that. Why are you? Come on, man. This isn't a fun. This isn't a fun. And he probably said it every time he got in front of us. He goes, "I'm letting you know right now, you're dying."
Yeah.
So is everyone around. Anyway, it was. He did a good job taking it where he wanted to take that. But it's funny. I literally just yesterday I was looking at an awesome short of Jamie on TikTok. It was brilliant. I was looking at it anyway off this podcast. And then the next, this is really interesting in light of our conversation today. The next video that just came up right after you was really interesting. I found myself just sitting there watching. I couldn't stop watching it. Somebody was bringing, oh gosh, now I'm forgetting his name. The Genesis drummer. What's his name? Gosh, it'll come to me. I can Phil.
You're the only guy. You're the only guy I know that knows drummers.
Phil Collins. You know, I can feel it coming. So somebody was bringing him in to his original drum set where he did that song. I can feel. And he was bringing him because people forget he was actually a really good drummer. He was the drummer with Genesis before he became, Phil Collins or whatever. And dudes, he is walking in there with the cane. Like slower than my mother, like just like you can tell I don't know, I can see he's dying of something. I didn't go Google it or whatever, but they're just bringing him in. It's just, you're just watching, just like, see, in my mind, I'm still singing in MTV videos, doing with like 10 hit songs in between 1980 and 1985 or something, and it's just like that. It's funny. I just was, I think now I know why the Lord had me see that. Like I just was reminded of, it doesn't matter if you're famous, that his songs will go on. Well, every person remembers the
Oh yeah.
I can't, my children know that, you know what I mean? That'll kind of go on, but Phil Collins won't.
Yeah.
And all that matters, according to Jesus, is if Jesus knows him or not.
Yeah.
And if he knows Jesus. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. I've only had one hero raised from the dead. All my other heroes are dying or have passed away.
Right.
Exactly. Well said. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but that's a difficult thing. What you're saying, Josh, is that both of us have actually experienced where we've come on the other end of it. And the thankfulness you talk about, I'm the same way. We just celebrated Jesse's, my youngest son's 30th birthday just the other day. And it was so every time we have a birthday, every time we have something, it reminds me of how precious that is, which it should be for all of us at any time, right? Because again, as as Matt Kearney says, we're all just one phone call from our knees. So every single day I think what happened for me from a focus standpoint is people became way, way more important. It kind of just cut through the crap. We have you said that something like that. It just cuts through the crap. It gets to what's important. I remember Steve Sessler, one of our elders, saying that. You know Steve Sessler? Yeah, one of our elders. He and he almost died during COVID. And I remember weekly, man, he was so weak. He must have been 40 pounds light, but he sat before us in the congregation and talked. And it was and that was his biggest thing. Yeah. It's like the only people are important. Only walking with Jesus is important. Everything else is fluff. Everything else just is stuff that's happening around us,
Yep.
So, yeah.
Josh, something that's been really cool about this podcast is we've found that people will respond back to us like, hey, this is something I was going through right when you were talking about this. So I'm thinking there's people listening to this that they may be on the front end of 2009. Did you say it was 2009? And you started to really ask that question, which is a quid pro quo question. Will I follow God even if my kiddo dies? Like, is this real? What would you say? What would be some things that you would say to that person that is in the midst of that moment where they're really thinking through, okay, is this God real? Do I believe? Am I going to follow him in this dark moment here? What are some things that you might say to that person, that listener who is walking through something like that?
Yeah, I would. Well, one, I would say um, that it doesn't matter what I believe, right? Doesn't matter what I believe. It's that if I were to sit here and tell them this is what I believe,
Hmm.
so then you should believe it.
Right.
Mhm.
That's not actually what they need in this moment. If I were to try and give you some false platitudes and say, oh, God's got a plan in it. If I were to kind of start throwing all the Christian cliches at them,
Mhm.
I'm going to make them puke.
Hmm.
Right.
I'll tell them, I'll tell you what I think I have learned, and I believe that they will learn if they open themselves up to this, is one, God understands their suffering. Two, there's nothing more important than the presence of God in the midst of that. I would say that God will feel closer in the midst of that suffering than they have ever felt him before.
Mhm.
Without suffering, we inoculate ourselves. We cocoon ourselves in whatever else we can to not feel as much as possible.
Mhm.
When we're feeling, there's something about the closeness of God that is sweeter than anything.
Hmm.
Um, and I would say, I think what I would say to them is that there is a God that is more understanding of what they're going through than they can imagine.
Mm.
Hmm.
That um, has an incredible amount of love for them,
Mm.
but they don't have to set their brain aside. They don't have to check their brain at the door to encounter him. I th- I think that God is not afraid of their questions or
Mhm.
their doubt.
Huh.
One of the things that I really think we might miss, and it might be worth meditating more on, is that the opposite of faith isn't doubt, but it's certainty.
Hmm.
Mm.
Hmm.
Can we invite people into doubt to actually encounter God
Mm.
in their doubt? Is that actually the doubt is okay? That the church, or that, you know what? Who cares if the church accepts the doubt? The moments that are going to matter for them is going to be personal in their car or at their home
Mm.
or whenever they're alone, when God is not afraid of their doubt.
Yep.
Right. Right. Yep.
Actually, I think when if I were to say it, that if Satan or the enemy of God were to win anything, it's producing Christians that are certain and they stop trusting God
Yeah.
Mm.
for the things they
That's
don't
good.
understand.
Wow, that's
Yep.
really good. Yep.
Yep.
I love that. That's really good.
And so
Yeah.
God is I think he is so secure in this process to
Yeah.
walk with us in that he doesn't need them to have it all figured out,
Mhm.
and to be open to the mystery of God and what he has for them in the midst of that. And I tell you, it's going to be not easy, but it will be rich.
Yeah.
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 Um,
Yeah. I love that term mystery of God. I love that. Yeah, we really do. Again, we just miss that. There's a yeah. I'll tell you who makes me really nervous is the theologian that just oh yeah, this is how it is. Blah blah blah. And I'm like, you're right. Right. Almost immediately, I'm like, I think I just shut my ears clean off right there. You know, because I'm like, if you've got them all figured out, we're not worshiping the same God.
Yeah.
I don't know how this works. You know. Anyway, yeah. Man, would you pray for
Hmm.
people that are in that place right now? Like, I know, I agree with you. The Lord has just been so wonderful to us and so sovereign in this. Would you pray for people? I think there are going to be lots of people who hear this who are in the middle of whatever, like, as you say, whatever those trials are. We all have different ones. And would you just pray for well, however the Lord leads you, but that they would experience those things that you've just talked about?
yeah, absolutely. Mm. God, we just thank you so much for meeting us, for being a God who's with us, for being Emmanuel, for being not distant, but someone who is present. God, I pray for people who are watching this right now that they would encounter your presence, not your answers, not your rules, not your dogma, not the theology per se, but they would encounter you first. God, I pray that you would give them your presence and that they would experience you both in their heart and in their mind. That you would renew them heart and mind. God, I know there are people that are suffering. I know that there are people that are going through an immense amount of pain, loss, trauma, whatever that is. And I thank you for your promise of your presence. I thank you that you can, in ways that we can't explain, in ways that a sermon can't put into a beautiful package with a bow on top, there's something about how you meet us in the desert, how you meet us in the places when we're alone, that only you can do. And I just pray you do that for those listening that need that today. I pray for, honestly, all of us are experiencing resistance. And I pray for those who need courage, that they would say yes to courage. For those who have protected themselves and have lived a life of just caution and overthinking and all of those things, and they've decided to play it safe everywhere and haven't risked anything and haven't said yes to what you're putting on their heart. I pray, God, you give them a dose of courage, that they could say yes to an adventure with you and start moving in the direction that how you've wired them, and that they would become everything that they can become. So we just bless you, Lord. We thank you that you invite us into a journey that's not boring at all. You invite us in a journey that doesn't promise us perfect outcomes or even the storybook ending that we all thought, but man, you invite us into a journey that is present with you and so interesting. And I just want to say yes to that. I want to continue to say yes to that. What I said yes to 10 years ago is now a history lesson. But what I need to do is posture myself. I want to posture myself to say yes to what you're saying now, what you're inviting me into now with my family, with my life, the way I engage my city, all of those things. So we thank you, Lord. In his name, amen.
Yeah, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Josh, for being with us. Josh Johnson, who is an awesome friend. We do need to see you more, and you may not stop in without saying hi again. That is not acceptable. But hey, man, thanks a lot for being with us today. We really appreciate you and your story and being honest with us and just your story with Kira and your family and all that, and also how to win a woman. Come on, single guys, let's get it on together. Anyway, all right, well, hey, you guys, I am Raz. This is Dr. J, and I want to shout out to my boy, Mikey B, taking care of us, making us look really, really good today. As always, hey, if this is really connecting with you or you know someone who needs to hear this, then subscribe, send it on to them, and we're just going to ask the Lord to really bless this. So anyway, thank you guys for coming in. Check us out, listening. We appreciate it.
Bye.